Coming up on the live and interactive ACSA legislative lunch break, Dorothy and I will get you all of your latest news and information from the state capitol and CDE with an in-depth analysis on how it impacts you. Plus, we're talking today about Proposition 2, the statewide school facilities bond, what you need to know about the bond and how you can handle any misinformation that's happening in your school community.
The ACSA legislative lunch break starts now.
And it's just after 1 o'clock. We welcome you on a Wednesday to the live and interactive ACSA legislative lunch break. I'm Naj Alikhan, ACSA Senior Director of Marketing and Communications, along with Dorothy Johnson, ACSA's legislative advocate. Dorothy, welcome. I believe this is the first time that you are co-hosting the ACSA legislative lunch break. How are you today?
I'm doing well. You know, longtime listener. I've loved joining as a guest on certain topics, and now it's great to be here as a co-host. And I actually had a little bit of a practice run yesterday. My local gym here in Sacramento was celebrating their 10th anniversary, getting a little media coverage. And unbeknownst to me, I got pulled onto camera to demonstrate some workout moves that we were doing. So I think I'm ready for whatever this afternoon throws our way.
Okay. All right. For those of you wondering, Edgar on assignment today at the Women's in School Leadership Forum that's happening down in Southern California. So if you're watching now, but you are down there at that conference, make sure to say hello to Edgar. Coming up, we are going to talk about Proposition 2, the statewide school facilities bond. There's a lot of information out there, but we want to be able to give you clarity about what this bond is all about and how you can communicate that out to your public. We'll make sure to get that information to you when we have an expert in the field come on and talk about the school facilities bond. And luckily, Dorothy is here because she also is an expert on the school facilities bond. So Dorothy, we're going to hit you up on some of the information on that. Couple of news stories for you that I want to bring your attention to. This one on academic recovery. Now, the Center on Reinventing Public Education, it's a research group at Arizona State University. It's reporting that the average American student in school during the pandemic is less than halfway to full academic recovery. That is the research there, and we'll go ahead and put that link into the chat. Last year, this group reported that the slow pace of recovery was especially poor for older students that had little or no time left in the K-12 system. But now, younger students are showing the signs of struggle as what the study calls COVID babies are entering kindergarten. They are less prepared for grade level learning. School districts, according to this report, facing significant challenges related to teacher workforce, mental health, funding, and shifting habits like chronic absenteeism. Not a surprise there. But another challenge that we're hearing about is a lack of transparency. The report indicates that just 7 states made it easy to see some level of performance data at the school level, while 16 states made it nearly impossible to find that data. So again, that link is in our chat section. And that also allows me to tell you about this other piece that is out there about brain development. The Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences released a study early this month on the impact of the COVID lockdown on children's brain development. Their research found that the accelerated maturation of the brain was greater in females than in males. Their measurements indicate that the brain accelerations was found to be 4.2 years in females and just 1.4 years in males. So some interesting data. We put that over in the chat as well. And Dorothy, this is one that I want to get your comment about. ACSA, of course, was involved with Senate Bill 976. That was the Nancy Skinner bill that would force online platforms from sending addictive social media feeds to minors or notifications without the consent of parents or a guardian. Now, Instagram, it's announced today making changes to its settings, according to a report from the New York Times, designed to address content that could be deemed inappropriate. Instagram accounts for users under 18 will be made private by default, meaning that only approved followers may see posts. The approvals, which come from the account holder. Now, the app, according to the Times report, will stop notifications to minors from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. to help promote sleep. Instagram will also add tools for adults, including a feature allowing parents to monitor accounts that their teens are messaging. Axios is reporting that these new settings will immediately impact users in the US, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia, with changes taking effect in other countries within the next 60 days. So, Dorothy, you and I talked about this story this morning because we were getting some of the details. You worked a lot on Senate Bill 976, the Skinner bill. What's your reaction? I know you had a smile on your face.
Yeah, I mean,
about this.
This is a positive step. We're still waiting for the governor to take action on Senate Bill 976 with a host of, hundreds of other bills over the next 2 weeks. But this is a very positive step. This is capturing some of the language that we were trying to pursue in 976. And, this came from firsthand experience from our ACSA members who said that these disruptive feeds, the constant notifications, our education leaders only have so much control over this while students are on campus. But when they go home and they're continuously barraged with the alerts and the information and the data updates, I think this is a good first step. But obviously, we want to see this go much further to make sure that the notifications and feeds are not happening during school hours, and that there's some other controls, again, to make sure that our students' behavioral, emotional, social well-being is uplifted and not dragged down by these addictive feeds.
Yeah, it was an interesting story to read, and as somebody who has a 17-year-old who's on social media and has an Instagram account, to just know that these are going to be default features now, and that it's going to take some collaboration between parents and the minor. Certainly an interesting story, that's for sure. Did want to point out some of our viewers who are on the chat today. Jason Angle was the first one with us today from Region 12. Neri, you and I are going to address something later on in the show, so I'm just preparing you for that. Rusty Gordon and Heather Armelino with us as well. All right, let's talk school facilities bond. It is something that we know has an impact statewide on all of the school districts, and we're going to narrow down the focus of what this bond is and how you need to communicate it out to your school community. Jeff Gozo is the principal and at Gozo Strategy and Campaigns, one of our school facilities bonds experts. Jeff, let me just ask you, tell me about your role as far as the yes on Proposition 2 effort. What can you tell us about what the work you're doing right now as far as Prop 2?
Great. Well, first, thank you so much for having me with you today. Also, thank you so much to ACSA for all the support for Prop 2. This is just really such a critical issue, especially in the environment that we're in. I work in political campaigns by trade. I spent many years working with the legislature, but have run campaigns over the last 20 years in all parts of California. One of the parts of the business I enjoy the most is working on ballot measure campaigns. It's where the campaign and policy meet up at the end of the day. And, we've got, a real great opportunity to pass Prop 2 this fall. Specifically, I've been hired to work with our coalition partners like ACSA, put together the strategy and implement that strategy so that way we can ensure success of Prop 2 at the end of the day. The campaign that I'm overseeing has multiple arms of it, from coalition building and field and outreach, and how best we can utilize and leverage coalition partners, right, to get our message out on Prop 2, to the paid media communications that we'll do, whether that's digital communications or social media or mail directly to voters to communicate what we need to about Prop 2. Or our communications lane, which is, trying to fight it out with editorial boards, others, create earned media opportunities around the state. So overseeing that effort, really honored to be able to lead this campaign and work with ACSA.
Yeah, Jeff, it's been great working with you and our other coalition partners. So you mentioned a bunch of different approaches, strategies that the campaign is working on. We're about 6 weeks out from the election. Where is the focus at this point in time to get voters to say yes on Prop 2?
Yeah, great question. Right, one of the things that we've been really focused on is how do we effectively talk about Prop 2 and what are the components of that. We've conducted public opinion research that has shown us that we need to connect Prop 2 in a very straightforward way with the need and sympathy that the public feels around public schools and the need for funding in public education. I don't think anybody on the program today or watching this program would be surprised to learn that well over a supermajority of voters, at 70% and above, believe that there is a significant or large need for funding for public education in California, right? And what we need to do is be able to connect that sympathy and that need with the need for public school facilities. And I know we're calling, it's on the ballot and that's technically the term, but one of the things that we've learned is that we want to be able to communicate this in a way that people understand that. And an even better way to talk about it is, right, just more money to upgrade and repair our public schools, right, our classrooms in that, right? So making it very tangible for people. We've also learned that we need to be able to be very specific when we talk to voters about what Prop 2 will do, right? And when we give context to those repairs, support people get it and feel much more connected to that. So that's whether it's, asbestos or leaky roof, right? Or electrical, right? Those actual tangible things. And I think you'll all see those, right? There's a lot of other local bonds on the ballot. In those ballot labels, right? The specificity about what that bond is in those labels, right? That voters see, right? That's not something that's in the label that the state allows to be conveyed. So we want to be very specific in that front. Two, I think we've got to be able to communicate, right, what this is. There is, and I think folks have seen in other campaigns that have been run in, either recently or in the past few years about whether it's bonds or taxes, right, and in this environment. But we've learned that there is some confusion amongst voters where they believe that this measure or measures like it actually increase taxes, when that's actually not the truth at all, right? Prop 2 will not increase taxes or fees at all. So our campaign is wanting to make sure that voters know that Proposition 2, right, is here to address a solution, right, that our schools desperately need this funding to make specific repairs without raising taxes.
Folks, if you have any questions for Jeff on Prop 2, go ahead and put those into the chat. Jeff, I want to be specific on something. Since you said this a couple of times, be specific to voters. Let me just, and this isn't an anecdotal story, this is an actual conversation that I had with a superintendent. He says to me, Naj, we have to build a whole new school on the other side of town in our district because we're seeing an explosion of residents. More kids are growing up on that side of town. We need to build a whole new high school, and having a local school bond and a statewide school bond on the same ballot is problematic because you are having to do a whole lot of informing the public about this. You said be specific to voters. So I guess the question is, what's the campaign strategy to counter misinformation that is out there?
Yeah, I don't think we have seen any research at all that local measures and the state bond are in competition for votes at all. And quite frankly, we've seen the alternative of that, where voters know what this is going for, right? That these, right, your local district, right, has access to the money in Prop 2, right, as well as the local bonds, right? Because most of that money, right, it's all matching funds at the state level, right? So local districts are going to benefit that, right? And I think in many cases, a lot of districts, right, are going to rely to complete their needed upgrades and repairs and modernizations, or new builds, right, with that local money in conjunction with the state funding. And so I think being very clear with voters that, right, these work in concert together. And it's one of the things that we as a campaign are trying to do, both to give opportunity for engagement on this, but also, right, provide, added value to all these local districts that are trying to pass measures on their own, right? And so we're right now in the process of developing a Prop 2 app, right, that can be downloaded, can be a very easy tool, right, for joint engagement, right, where people who live in a school district can talk to their contacts about Prop 2 and their local measure at the same time, right, to make sure that people understand that these work in concert.
Yeah, that's so well said, Jeff. I'm really glad we're able to underscore this, highlight it, double down over and over again that it's not a competition. These are going to work so much. They're going to further those dollars and really make sure that whether it's improvements, modernization, new construction, our students are going to have safe, reliable, healthy facilities to learn and grow in. So appreciate you taking the time to really walk our viewers through that point. So the campaign just hit a milestone of over 100 coalition partners, all supporting Prop 2, all saying yes. Who else outside of, kind of our education leaders world are part of this effort to make sure voters know what Prop 2 is all about and get them to vote aye on Election Day?
Great. Yeah, I'm really proud of, how quickly, obviously, AB 247, right, passed, this summer, right, and this campaign's been stood up since then. But how quickly it's come together, and thanks to ACSA for the help with that too. But we do have a broad coalition putting this, that's come together to pass this, and from, like you mentioned, traditional education advocates and others, whether that's the California Teachers Association, the California Federation of Teachers, California School Employees Association, the school districts themselves. We've already had a large number of school districts pass a resolution in support of Proposition 2. But we've also got community organizations. We've got green schools and environmental concerns. There is money available in this bond for extreme heat and greening of school facilities and schoolyards. We've got folks who are on the nutrition side who are supportive of this measure, right? And then we've got regular grassroots community organizations on it. I do want to point out, right, this campaign is a bipartisan campaign. Both the California Democratic Party and the California Republican Party have taken support positions for Proposition 2, right, which is really important. And business organizations as well. We just got yesterday the Los Angeles BizFed and the Carson Chamber of Commerce. The California Chamber of Commerce officially endorsed this measure last week. So we are, right, a broad-based coalition in every sense of the term.
Jeff, we have a question from Laura Hurt, and Laura looks like a new viewer. So Laura, if you are a new viewer, welcome to our family over here. Laura asks, how will state bond monies be distributed equitably? So I'll include that in this question about wildfires across the state, obviously having an impact on local communities and schools. So how does Prop 2 help our schools when it comes to natural disasters? And then the next piece of it that Laura asked, how will the state bond monies be distributed equitably?
No, and great questions, right? I mean, there is money specifically dedicated to both those that one of the things that the legislature did contemplate as they were working to pass AB 247 was to change the formulas in which that schools that are more in need have greater access to a higher percentage of that. I don't have those sliding scales in front of me. Dorothy may be able to address some of those technical things directly, and I'm sure we can provide to you, right, what that new funding formula is in those matching funds provided in Prop 2.
Yeah, I'll just add on there, definitely significant changes. You know, the financial hardship definition has changed, so more districts are eligible, changing the bonding capacity. So under the prior or the current state facility program, you would have a certain amount that you can bond for. We've raised that, so more districts, more schools are eligible under that regard. There's also technical assistance. So not just on the funding side, but in addition, the state is going to provide technical assistance for those districts who maybe haven't had access to the program, or to help them get their projects in the queue more quickly. And then, of course, there are additional considerations for small school districts who generally have had to compete with larger districts to get to those dollars, to get access to the state program. There's a set aside for them, as well as technical assistance to make sure they have the right people to plan it out and submit their projects to get those critical dollars back to their local facilities. And on natural disasters, yeah, we've seen, this is new too for this year. So we're looking at not only dollars for recovery following a disaster, but also direct dollars for temporary classrooms, so that your students can come back to the school site, try to create that normalcy of a routine. So those are two new ways that Prop 2 is supporting communities affected by disasters. And so I feel like that's sort of one of my pitch pieces, but we've got a lot of folks, I think, who are supporting Prop 2 on this call. Jeff, what would you give as your elevator pitch to those or that are undecided or on the fence about what they want to do when their ballots show up and they're ready to go to the polls and make a decision on Prop 2? What would you say to those folks?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of look at this in a three-pronged approach. One, right, we want to make sure that we're always telling people, right, that what the problem is, right, in a really efficient way, right, what Prop 2 does. We've always got to be in a place to say what Prop 2 does, right, and then provide some color to that. You know, one of the things that we've found is very effective, right, and I think there are folks that the further that they get away from the public school system, right, don't necessarily have that sense in mind. But, right, I mean, you know, many of California's school children, right, attend public schools that don't meet some of these minimum standards, right? There are children that are, you know, exposed to dangers like asbestos, mold, right? We have schools that have deteriorating gas and electrical lines, leaky roofs, right? And some schools that actually just need safe drinking water in California, right? And be able to really put some context to that, right? And this is what Prop 2 is going to do. It's going to help some of these school districts make the most urgent repairs that are needed to make sure that both educators, administrators, and students, right, have the ability to learn in the best environments possible, right? Prop 2 is also going to make significant investments in job training and vocational and career educational facilities, right? It's not just about getting our schools up to the minimum standards, but we want to make sure that we've got the best classrooms and job training programs available, right? And that's one thing that Prop 2 does is it helps our students ensure that they're prepared for jobs, in a 21st century economy, right? All the same while ensuring that there's accountability, that money stays local, right? This money is going local. Sacramento is not going to be able to take this money right, and rededicate it to other purposes. This money is going directly to school repairs and upgrades, right, without raising your taxes, right? And we always want to make that point. So that's my brief elevator pitch, and happy to share. We'll want to provide anybody who's interested in getting engaged with this campaign, right, and how to partner up. So please let us know. You can find us at yesprop2ca.com, and hope to engage and have everyone's support here. So.
And also want to point out that that on our ACSA Resource Hub, we have resources related to Proposition 2 for you to take a look at. There is a link to the Prop 2 content right there. Jeff Gozo, principal at Gozo Strategy and Campaigns, our expert on Proposition 2. Jeff, it's been great having you here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. We look forward to having you post-election, hopefully when Prop 2 passes. Thanks, though, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And folks, if you like what you see here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, we will tell you how you can be part of our ACSA Legislative Lunch Break family. First, we want to tell you about our ACSA Podcast Network. We have 3 different podcasts that you want to take advantage of on leadership, on governmental relations, and then, of course, on the lunch break itself. First, let's talk about the ACSA Leadership Classroom. This is leadership skills and history about leadership from leaders outside of public education. Our first guest was a tech entrepreneur. Second was a California State University president. Our third will be a Division I athletic commissioner. You can listen to the ACSA Leadership Classroom on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. We also have Behind the Bills, which is anchored by Yvonne Carrillo, ACSA's Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations. You'll get news updates there. You'll go in depth on some of the advocacy points inside the state capitol. That's on Behind the Bills. You can get that also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And of course, the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. We're a podcast now. You'll get to hear this one. If you didn't watch it, you get to hear Dorothy and I talk about Proposition 2. That's the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break podcast. Again, Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And as I mentioned, if you like what you've seen here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, we invite you to be part of our family by liking us on Facebook, following us on YouTube. When you do, you'll get instant alerts when we're about to come on the air with breaking news. And of course, a reminder about our regularly scheduled Wednesday show. So go ahead and jump onto Facebook or YouTube. And if you have great stories happening in your school community, we want to tell those stories too. Send your news releases, your photos, your talking points over to our EdCal editor, Michelle Carl at mcarl@axa.org. All right. A question, Dorothy. Because you mentioned this at the top of the show, that you were on TV yesterday.
Yes.
What channel were you on TV yesterday?
Oh gosh, I was so winded and so wiped out from doing 60 minutes of cardio. I think it was the morning show. CBS, the morning show.
The morning show. Okay. All right.
Yes. I was, sweat dripping down my face, trying to keep up with the coach, telling me to do burpees, lunges. So I was less paying attention to who was asking me and just trying to, carry out the edge. Yeah.
Okay. We'll have our crack team in the back, see if we can get that footage for the next time.
I can't wait. Hopefully you can show some clips next week.
We'll definitely do that. And I want to I just want to make mention, we have a viewer who really likes when there's a co-host here that is not Edgar, and I think he is advocating for me to not be here as well. Neri, our great friend, put on there, Naj, do you have a second job lined up? That was my reaction, Neri, to your comment about me having a second job lined up, because Megan was on, and then the idea there of Megan and Edgar rather than Edgar and I. Neri, we catch what you're saying on the chat. Just be aware of that. So I will absolutely take it personally that you're ready to punt me out of the co-host chair in favor of Edgar and Megan, or Edgar and Dorothy, or apparently, according to Neri, just about anyone that you can pull off the street to replace me. So Dorothy, get ready because Neri might be pushing for you to be taking over this co-host seat. I hope you're ready for it.
Put me in, coach. I'm ready. Put me in.
Perfect. It's 1:30, folks. Thanks so much for joining us here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Remember, we are live and interactive Wednesdays here on ACSA Facebook and ACSA YouTube. Have a great rest of the day and rest of the week. We'll see you next week right here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break.